Hammond, what, 13.2%
Oh, my Lord.
down?
Well, she had a 14% margin.
Wow.
It was a 20% margin, I think, one stage, Julie, so down nearly the entire 14%. So let's have a look at what happens if we can. That's 6% counted. We should be able to.
Wow.
And again, another seat would turn teal.
What a boil.
So we are seeing double-digit swings in some places against the Liberal Party in Western Australia. Some of that's coming to the Labor Party, and I think the obvious answer from all of this is there is no way that Scott Morrison can form government.
OK, well, we do have breaking news for you right now. Watching the seats to fall so far and the voting, friends, we believe it is time to make a call, Pete.
Well, if things continue tracking the way they are right now, Nine is projecting a Labor Party victory. Ooh. It remains to be seen whether that is in majority or minority, but Labor is now on track to form government.
Wow.
All right, that means Anthony Albanese will be Prime Minister. Nine's political editor Chris Uhlmann, break it down for us. Why are we making this call now?
Because there is not enough numbers in the parliament for Scott Morrison to be able to negotiate with anybody, and that big teal vote in any event, I always thought that's a change vote. Those people do not go to Canberra and say they're voting for Scott Morrison as Prime Minister anyway. So even if he'd finished on 73 or 72, he would have had a hard time. He's going to be nowhere near that. So the only person who will be in a position to form a government is Anthony Albanese. It actually looks like the Labor Party will get there as a majority government. I think the Victorians and the West Australians will probably be the people that hand Anthony Albanese that. Where there was the biggest sentiment against Scott Morrison, where the people of Victoria felt that Scott Morrison was barracking against their state, even though the lockdowns were hard, it was their Premier against a Prime Minister they saw from Sydney. In Western Australia, don't forget, the Labor Party made a big deal there of the fact that he backed Clive Palmer, and any government would, by the way, in a High Court decision, want to know how that plays out, would enter that kind of case. But the Labor Party painted him as being, again, the Prime Minister for the east states and not the western states. And so I think that sentiment's playing out very strongly there. So I think we probably are on track for a majority Labor government. At worst, it will be a minority.
Bill Shorten, congratulations.
It's exciting. It's exciting. And congratulations to Anthony Albanese. It's his call. It's his right to go out and call it when he gets the numbers. Obviously, we've got colleagues, you know, fighting for their political lives, some against the Greens. There's still hard-working candidates who are waiting to see what's happened. But this is a mighty night. This is a big night. Certainly there's a teal quake going on, but let's not take away from Labor. We regrouped after the last election. We came close twice, 2016, 2019, but Anthony's now hopefully closed the deal with the Australian people. It's an exciting time on climate, on the measures that we've outlined.
Do you think it's fair to say that old adage that oppositions don't win, governments lose? Is that a fair thing to say, Bill?
Well, I think it's part of the picture. I've got no doubt that the single biggest issue in this election, in my opinion, was Scott Morrison. And it was a referendum on Scott Morrison. It is a referendum on Scott Morrison. But I think that doesn't quite capture what Labor's been saying on climate, on the minimum wage. I think that struck a chord, lifting the minimum wage by 5%, cost of living measures such as childcare. And I do think people want an anti-corruption commission. I don't know why it's taken your old party 4 years to do nothing. Anyway, but let's wait and see. There's still votes to count.
There's not really any major issues here that the Labor Party has a huge mandate for because they ran a small target strategy. But I also think this does show that when a government tries to run a small target strategy, it's in a very vulnerable position because you are in government and you're expected to do things. And you know, we did struggle to sort of map out what we would do next as a government, and this is why perhaps we're struggling.
It's extraordinary to think that a party could lead, that a party could govern after they've had a 2.5% swing against them and they've got a primary vote of 31%. That's pretty extraordinary.
Oh, well,
I think you forgot the congratulations.
Oh, sorry, I did. You're right. Congratulations, though. But isn't it? It is amazing.
Bill, I have got a text here. I've got to share it with you. I mean, this is breaking news. Chloe wants to know, what are you getting her for her birthday tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
I want you to announce it on national TV.
It's a Labor
It's a
victory,
surprise. I have got her something, though. It is a surprise.
Well, it's going to be you in government, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sure that'll please her to no end.
We've got another one of those T-shirts, is it? You know.
Yeah, no.
Can we put this
free merch?
Can we put this not the birthday, but can we put and happy birthday for tomorrow, Chloe? But can we
Chloe.
put this in perspective? The pre-polls and the postals. We've talked about 40%. What is this going to mean? We're looking at these trends, and they're pretty remarkable, but can the postals and the pre-polls make a difference?
Well, it's 50%. It's almost 50%.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
What do you think?
Yeah, like where the seats are, I reckon, under 2 or 3%, sure. I think, but where the margin's bigger than that, the only thing which could really derail, if you're north of a 2-3% margin, because that's a pretty big sample, is if the campaign in question didn't run a postal vote campaign. So that's why I would just say let's not give up on some of our contests against the Greens. I mean, they're going to try and... It's too close, perhaps, fully in Richmond, in Griffith and McNamara, which we hold. Got to wait and see what happens in Ryan. But, you know, going through that list, Higgins, Chisholm, Reid, Boothby, Sturt, we don't know. But Casey, we've got to wait and see what happens there. Deakin, I'm pretty interested to see what happens there. Robertson, it's done very well. Brisbane, Pearce, Swan. I think hopefully we're on track for a majority government, but we've got to wait to get a bit more data.
And on the postals too, I mean, this was the first time that I saw the Labor Party run a postal vote application campaign in many seats. Normally it's something we do because of the rural vote needs the postals. But I think in the post-COVID era, Labor decided to do that. And so postals might look a bit different than normal here, but there's a lot of them. There isn't a lot of them. So it's going to potentially change some seats.
We should also look at the seat of Menzies, which is not one that was on the map at all, and the Labor Party is leading in the seat of Menzies. So that's in Victoria again. There is a real sense that Victoria is punishing Scott Morrison for... So this is actually part of the COVID vote.
But this goes to my point, Chris, that this is a suburban seat. It's not a teal seat. It's not a climate change seat. And we have fallen between two stools. You know, we're not either Arthur or Martha at the moment, because we're trying to say we're adopting radical climate change action, but we're also not going after the suburban seats where people rate cost of living is their biggest issue. And so if we can't win the teal seats and we can't win these sort of seats, that's a real message that we've got to pick a side here if we want to actually attract a vote, attract a base, attract a level of support from people enough to win government.
Well, I think both sides ran very risk-averse campaigns. The government's campaign was, look, we've been incumbent for 9 years, we've done a good job, look what we've achieved, so it's a risk if you go Labor. Labor ran a campaign saying the government's to be blamed for everything and it's time for a change. I don't know that either campaign really inspired people. And we're looking at the primary vote, very low. We're looking at so many third parties, independents, attracting significant votes.
Can I say too that the only seat that the Liberal parties were hoping for in New South Wales was the seat of Gilmore, and things have turned there somewhat, and now Fiona Phillips is leading Andrew Constance. So that glimmer of good news that they had has now turned, and the swing to the Liberal Party, there has been a swing to the Liberal Party, but insufficient for Andrew Constance at this stage to take that seat. We're saying that's too close to call.
Can I just say something in response to the point that people aren't inspired by this election? When you have a look at Victoria, we thought we were at the high water mark in Victoria. You know, there are seats that are falling in Victoria that no one would ever have imagined of voting Labor. So it is clear that there is something that has really struck a chord with people, particularly in Victoria. Now, whether that's inspiration from Labor or disgust with Scott Morrison or a mixture of both, but I don't think we can say that people haven't been emotionally affected when we see some of these seats which have never fallen to the Labor Party ever,
and I think
tonight.
That's right, Kate, and I think that's why Western Australia will be so interesting. It's been such a coalition, well, Liberal Party, not coalition, because the Nats rarely rate there, but it's been a very strong Conservative state for us. And Scott Morrison, for some reason, you know, the cave dweller comment, that resonated. It was on the front page of the newspapers and suggesting, you know, of course the Commonwealth backed the High Court case with Clive Palmer, but it was such a bad look to have the Prime Minister backing Clive Palmer against what a majority of West Australians wanted in terms of the restrictions on the restrictions on COVID during the pandemic.
And yet the Labor Party have preferenced Clive Palmer in WA over the Liberal Party at this election, which is extraordinary.
Not in short supply, you know that.
Very quick thing. Our preferences aren't going to get distributed to Clive Palmer, so that's a bit of a furphy. But can I just say one of the undercurrent issues has been the administration of the National Disability Insurance Scheme. When you ask what it means to be in government, just saying to the 500,000 people on the scheme, an Anthony Albanese government, if I'm fortunate to be the minister, we're going to get that back on track. So
OK.
good news for people with disabilities.
OK, I've got the hands on the levers again. We're going to go straight to Labor headquarters now, where we find Chris O'Keefe from the Nine Network, where I think, Chris, there's a pretty happy room behind you.
Oh, they were pretty happy to see when Labor wins popped up on the election coverage, and we started to call the Anthony Albanese victory. Now, it's extraordinary because people have brought it up here that 7 out of 10 Australians haven't voted for the Labor Party, and Anthony Albanese will be the 31st Prime Minister of Australia, and the people in here are just beside themselves. It has been a long, long time since Labor have had any love, especially here in New South Wales. I've been out of government for a long time. We're deep in the heart of Greenlaw, which is Anthony Albanese's seat. Canterbury Hurlston Park RSL, the place is absolutely chockers. I've seen everyone from federal ministers to state MPs to local councillors and mayors. I even saw Carmel Tevitt, Anthony Albanese's ex-wife here. That's how well he's doing, and that's how much people want to get him over the line. But when Anthony Albanese does finally come into this room, he'll be here, up on this stage, looking at this. Anthony Albanese will be the 31st Prime Minister of Australia, and these are the guys who got him there. Volunteers, young Labor supporters. Albo's going to be the Prime Minister. He's a local lad, grew up in the area. He's from the area. This is New South Wales and Australian Labor at its best. The kids love it. They absolutely love it.
How is that for you, Chris O'Keefe? You're just sort of stepping there where history will be made, we expect, very shortly. Possibly the best reception you've had on
Like
stage
I'm Prime
for a
Minister.
while. They're loving you, Chris. Look at that.
Getting warmed up.
He wouldn't have got... So it's fair to say it's been a long, long time since they've been able to taste victory. And I know this is probably what they would have wanted in 2019, but now they realise they've finally secured it. And that, in and of itself, is quite the moment, because don't forget, it's very difficult for the Labor Party to win government from opposition. It's only happened once with Kevin Rudd in 2007 since World War II.
No.
So it's not a small thing. Australians don't just decide to change governments. And these guys, the Labor supporters, the volunteers, all the young Labor guys who've been on polling booths and pre-poll for 2 weeks, because we don't have election day anymore, do we? We have a voting period of 2 weeks, and it's hard slog out there, and these guys do it all for nothing.
Hey,
whether they're
Chris,
work for unions
Chris, it's
or...
Peter Overton, mate.
Peter?
He's lapping it up, Pete.
When the Nine broadcast was on in the room, just relate to us the moment that they saw our projection that Labor will form government.
Oh, they were beside themselves, and you can understand why. And I think it started to build very slowly throughout the evening, didn't it? You sort of saw the Teal seats, the Teals take out some of the strong Liberals. And don't forget, there's hardly going to be a moderate Liberal in New South Wales in the Parliament at all. But as soon as they realised, regardless of the primary votes, regardless of what seats were falling and what weren't, they just saw things swing in their favour throughout the night. And as I said earlier in the broadcast, within the Labor Party, it's almost been a criminal offence to be optimistic. Well, now they're optimistic, they're celebrating.
They're chanting. Any idea when the man whose name they are chanting, Anthony Albanese, when he will be in the room? I know it's a little early just yet, but any word?
Yeah, well, we were told that Anthony Albanese was sitting in Marrickville at his semi. He's not at a big, there you go, thumbs up for Albo. He wasn't at a big sort of polling centre or tally room or anything like that. He was sitting in his semi in Marrickville in the inner city, a place he's lived for most of his life. He was there with a small group of staff and MPs. Penny Wong was there, and he was just going to see how things went. The last thing I heard out of Team Albo was that he was going to wait and see what happened in WA. And if the seats fell as expected, they were only expecting 2, but the swings we're seeing in WA, probably thanks to Mark McGowan, to be honest, we're seeing swings to Labor, which mean Anthony Albanese is not just looking like he's going to cobble together some sort of hodgepodge minority government, but he may well govern Australia in his own right with a Labor majority, thanks to the West. So I think we can expect Albanese to jump in his car, head down Old Canterbury Road, come here to Canterbury Hurlston Park RSL, not too long after that.
I'll tell you what, Chris, Toto the dog's
You reckon
going
they're excited?
Toto the dog's going to have a bit more land to run around, acreage at the lodge. He's going to have Kirribilli House with harbour views. From that semi in Marrickville, Toto's not going to know himself.
Yeah.
No, he won't, will he? I think they know they've won.
Okay.
I think poor old Matt Canavan will be in the fetal position.
Okay, we might leave it there for now. Chris O'Keefe.
Well, there'll be another day.
He's
There'll
still
be another
sitting
day.
upright at this stage. But we do have the incoming Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles.